Hold on, I was muted. Sorry. I just have been waiting to say that, right, and not mean it. So I'm going to start right on time because we only have 3 hours here today, and there's so much I want to cover. I'm not sure we can fit it in. Nobody ran for the doors. That's good. Okay, so 50 minutes. This is crazy. So I'm going to be doing a lot of live coding. I typically narrate as I code, so we'll be doing a lot of stuff all at once, so I don't want to waste any time. Welcome to this afternoon session on Brewing the Best of All Worlds, and we lost our screen. You know what? I think it's this plug, so I am going to take a moment and swap out plugs. There was a plug here when I got here, and I thought, well, why would I just drag mine out and take a chance on forgetting it? So I didn't do that, but I'm going to fix that now, and we'll be on our way. So anyway, while I'm doing that, welcome to this afternoon session. My name is Mark Heckler. For those of you who don't know me, I am a principal cloud developer advocate of Java and JVM languages with Microsoft. That was easy. I am a former Spring team member, and that's not even working. Let's see. Okay, so, and it switched screens on me. This is going to be crazy. All right, let's try this again. We're in business. Okay. So yeah, former Spring team member, worked for Pivotal for a number of years before Pivotal was absorbed into VMware, and then came over to Microsoft. I still work a lot with Spring. I just get to do it on a really cool cloud platform, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more later, but we're here to talk about Spring and Spring Cloud, right? So if you have questions, comments, or feedback, please save them to the end. Catch me afterward, whatever. If you think of them 10 minutes after walking off, that's exactly what I do every time. My best questions I think of after I've left the building. So if you think of anything, by all means, do reach out to me. The bad news is we have 50 minutes. That's very tight now. The good news is we have near infinite time afterwards. So catch me in the hallway, catch me on email, catch me on Twitter. Twitter's the best place to reach me. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that. You know that I practically live on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, why? Seriously, me or anybody else, the best way I find to reach out and just tag somebody really quickly is Twitter. If you don't want to share your thoughts with the whole world, that's fine. My DMs are open, so even if you just initially create a Twitter account and follow me and send me a DM, I will see it. So email I check sometimes. So anyway, a little bit about me. I am an architect and developer by background. I am an advocate, obviously. I am an author. I've co-authored a couple of books, contributed content and code to several other books. After co-authoring a couple of books, I swore I would never solo author a book, because even co-authoring is a ton of work. It's gratifying, but it's a ton of work. So guess what I did last year? I broke my promise to myself. I wrote a book all by my onesie. So it was fun. It was good. It was rewarding. Glad it's over. My editor is chasing me to do an update, so that'll probably happen. But, you know, for now, I've escaped, so I'm out here. So that's good. I am a Java champion, Java 1 Rockstar, Groundbreaker ambassador, Kotlin developer expert, and a licensed pilot. This is something I do for fun, right? I don't do this, for work. This is just something to literally get a different perspective on the world from, I'm an American, from several thousand feet up, right? So interesting, and you'll see this as we go through, because my domain that I'm going to be using today is aviation. Shock, right? But it's interesting because we have this rather odd hodgepodge, this mishmash of measurements. We use temperature in Celsius, but we use barometric pressure in inches of mercury. I don't know. And then we have French terms thrown in. So mist is BR for brouillard. I'm terrible with French. I'm just terrible. So go figure. Of course, the French obviously didn't influence aviation very early on. So it's just kind of this weird amalgam of terms and standards, and hey, we use them all. Anyway, so here's the latest book. That was the one that I solo authored. And if you're interested in knowing more about it, you can go to this link, get a free Safari Books Online O'Reilly subscription for like 14 days, whatever. Or if you have a subscription or if you want to buy it, that's all good. If not, that's cool too. Follow the book on Twitter. The book often has interesting things to say. Okay, well, good. So the plan for today, even more than yesterday's session. I love this quote by Leonard Bernstein, former composer and conductor of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. He once said, "To achieve great things, 2 things are needed, a plan and not quite enough time." And that's what we have today, so charge. A little bit of an overview in terms of distributed systems, in terms of microservice architectures. I find this is something that this to me covers the high points. And this corresponds very nicely with what you would consider to be Spring Cloud, but it's certainly not limited to it. Spring Cloud was a set of constructs, a set of libraries that allowed you to create distributed systems using Spring Boot applications and to make it easy for developers, or at least easier, right? I'm going to be hitting a familiar refrain several times throughout this session. And that is, as developers, we tend to absorb, take on a lot of complexity. And we do this because we're problem solvers, right? When we hit a roadblock, what do? Well, we say, just give me the permissions, just give me the ability, and I will make that happen. I will get that thing to production. And we do. The problem is, the next time we need to deploy something, we have to do all those 50 extra tasks as well. Maybe an additional 20. And the next time it's even more. And the next time it's even more. And before we realize it, the real value add that we came to produce, that we came to deliver for our customers, for our end users, we're spending this much time doing it and this much time doing extra stuff. Who here loves Kubernetes? Who here loves to work with Kubernetes? Who loves YAML? Okay, one person. Excuse me, why are you here? Just kidding. There always has to be one in the bunch, right? I'll bet you use Emacs too, right? Oh, thank goodness. Okay, so we still have something to talk about. That's good. All right. I diss on Kubernetes a little bit, but we all want to use it. We want what it offers, but we don't want to have to turn every knob, right? To adjust every dial. We don't want to have to configure it from ground up. We want the power of it. We want to be able to, should we need to, but we don't want to have to do that every time. And that's what constructs like this allow us to do. Anybody familiar with the old 12-factor app methodology? I mean, that was a good construct. It kind of got, like most things, co-opted by marketing and so on and so forth. But the ideas were sound, right? So you take your configuration. If you have multiple instances of a particular service, if you have the configuration, well, one, if you have the configuration internalized and something gets compromised or you need to change it, it gets very messy very quickly. But when you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 instances of that, that gets really problematic. So if you externalize that configuration, you touch it in one place and update everything. Makes a lot of sense. Service discovery, because if you have a service, again, multiple instances of that service, and they're talking or needing to access multiple instances of another service, and let's say that several of those instances are running in a region that goes down. Everything goes dark. And now these consuming services are looking for them and they can't find them. Well, if that's hard-coded, that's a bit problematic. So you need some mechanism that's dynamic for service discovery so you can find where to go for the answers you need as a service, not you and me, but our applications. Typically, you have some kind of backend services that will do a lot of processing, a lot of manipulation. You have consuming services that share that information. And again, sometimes you have this kind of overlap in terms of functionality, but I'm making a few distinctions here. And then a gateway service to control access and route things to the proper place. Again, using things like our service discovery, service registry. And then, of course, we want to bake in some neat and very useful features for resiliency and uptime, like load balancing, circuit breaking, flowing, reactive flowing, securing things, and all of that. So what do we wind up with? Well, we look for a way to do that, and you can roll your own. I've done it, you've done it, we've probably all done it. And again, we find that over time, we accumulate a lot of extra complexity. So a few years ago, Pivotal at the time, now VMware, and Microsoft came up with Azure Spring Cloud. Now, when Cloud Foundry was a thing, that had the promise of, hey, look, you focus on actually delivering business value for your end users and let the cloud handle a lot of the messiness. Cloud Foundry has had some issues over the last several years. There have been some twists and turns. The market adopted Kubernetes, yay. But that complicated things. But Microsoft and VMware work hard to produce, again, that platform, the platform of choice, for us to deploy our Spring Boot applications to and have a lot of those pieces click into place for us. You don't have to use it, but it's nice. It's a great load bearer for us as developers. I'll show you a little bit about that later on, but again, I want to get into the code, right? That's where we live. So let's code. Everybody does recognize this gentleman, right? You know, some places I go, I'm sadly, it's like I just look out at a sea of blank faces, and it's like, you've got to go to Netflix. You've got to go. I was spoken in a Latin American country, I don't remember which one, and they're like, it's not on our Netflix. We've looked. I was like, well, I'm not telling you to pirate anything. I'm not telling you to break any laws. But you need to find that show. That show is really good. It's a little dated, but it's really good. Okay, so anyway, let's dive into the code. Come on, come on. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go here and start at the Spring Initializer. And we're going to hand build a lot of this stuff just so you can see what all goes into it. Sometimes it's not a lot, sometimes it's a lot. We'll see as we go. So I'm going to start by creating a config service. And that's something that will, based on different inputs, will serve up properties to our various different instances of our various different services in our distributed system. So we're going to start with a Java. We'll do a Java project. We'll use Maven for our build system. But you do have options here. If you're a hipster, you can use Gradle. It's all good. I'm not. At least not today. I took off my hoodie, so I'll just stay with Maven. We're going to use the current version of Spring Boot 2.6.7. I'm going to change this to thehecklers.com because why not? My demo. Kidding. I don't know why it never works for me with example.com. Here we go. Okay. Tough crowd. Really tough crowd. Okay, so we've got the config service. I'm going to use jar packaging because after it all, it is the 21st century. So, let's go with jar instead of war. If you're stuck using wars, that's fine. I know a lot of folks are still in a corporate environment where you have an application server. That's fine. But it kind of does violate the 12 factors where you bring your dependencies with you, and that way you can manage them with your application. We can have long talks about that, and I'm happy to, but the jar does make a lot of sense for that reason. So let's add our dependencies. Well, we're going to go crazy with this one, and I'm going to add the dependency for config server, and let's generate this. I'm just going to drop that on the desktop and open that up and open that in our favorite IDE, NetBeans. Kidding. Every time I say that, I get some folks who think that, and that's interesting. Why is that doing that? I get some folks who think that I don't like NetBeans, and I really actually do. NetBeans is an awesome editor, awesome IDE. Why is that pulling up an old project? That is so bizarre. Hold on, desktop. Oh, hee. Computer's so literal, they just, they do exactly what you tell them to do, and that's really problematic. All right, so I'm going to go to application.properties, and we're going to add a little bit of, a couple of properties here that will get us started with our configuration, our config service. I'm going to just set the server port to 8888 so it doesn't do the default of 8080. And then I'm going to set my get URI to https://github.com/mkhack, typing helps, /mh-aasc-config.get. And this is just, if we go out and look at this repo, let's see. So this is just a repository where I have my different YAML files. See, you don't have to give up YAML just because you're not working in the bowels of Kubernetes. You can work with YAML, but this is YAML as it's supposed to be. Short, simple, concise, and manageable, right? So we have an application.yaml, and these are the properties, and these are just some generic properties I have that I serve up, and all of these are served up under the application.yaml to all applications that talk to the config server and say, give me some properties, right? And then you'll have some that are, and I do have some encrypted properties down here that I'm going to be using. Locally, config server will work with the Java cryptography engine, JCE, and encrypt and decrypt. But of course, when you go to something like Azure Spring Cloud, you have access to Key Vault, which is even better. But it's kind of nice to see it work locally. But if you have a different kind of service that identifies itself as something else, like an airport service or a discovery service, you can also get properties specific to that service. And config server uses Git repos, or you can use Vault, et cetera, et cetera. So you have options, right? And what it does is allow you to version control your properties, to externalize your properties. Anyway, little detour there. So this is all I'm doing is just pointing to that. So I'm going to go to my code. I'm going to write a mountain of code here. I'm going to say enable config server, and that's it. Now, I would just run this from the IDE, but I actually have a key that I'm going to be using. So I can encrypt and decrypt, right? So go here and I'll do a Maven clean package, and we will start that up. Well, build it, actually. I don't want to show you my key. It's super secret. Very important stuff. That was said fully tongue-in-cheek. But anyway, I mean, it's a bad practice. So java-jar target, config service, and let's run this. And then let's go take a look at what we might see. So let's see, localhost 8888 application default. And I'll blow that up. And we see here that we have, it's a default profile because I specified, give me what you have under default. Here are the property sources. And of course, I have a test plane, the Lance, and a test dot plane, just properties that I don't think I'll be using today. I use them in some other stuff. But here are the general properties. If I want to go just to specific things like the, let's see, the airport service. Did I type that right? My cursor was right in the way. Yep. So it gives me the properties from, let's see, so here we go, from the airport service, and it pulls those in. It also pulls in the properties for all services. And of course, this more specific wins. So if you have anything that conflicts, it takes what actually you meant for that specific kind of service and uses that. So that's a very quick tour of config service, but it does work. You don't see the stuff that is encrypted, but it does supply that downstream. So let's go ahead and get started with the next piece of what I call infrastructure or supporting framework, which is the discovery service. That's our config service, so discovery service. And same thing. We don't need this to be a config server, but we do want it to be a config client, so it can get its properties from our config service. Now, you can go discovery service first or config service first. I go config first. It's kind of a matter of preference, kind of pros, cons, but this is just how I'm doing it today. Again, your mileage may vary. Oops, and I want to bring in the discovery service. So let's generate that. By the way, if you're not familiar with the Spring Initializer, what it does is it generates your project, not code. As you've seen, it just creates your main application class, main method, but it gives you your structure. It gives you your POM or your build-up Gradle file if you prefer. So here we go. Let's go and open that. Similar type of routine here. I'm going to go here, close that, open the application properties. Come on, IntelliJ, keep up. And no, I don't want juice. I'm a coffee person. Okay, so we're going to supply a spring.application.name, and that is the name with which any instances of this service will identify itself to the config service so it can get properties specific to it, right? So this is our discovery service. Discovery service. By the way, those of you on the front row, thank you for sitting here. If I typo, please catch it and let me know before I hit build. And they're like, we will never sit in the front row again. You have coffee, right? I'm counting on you then. Yeah, I don't see anyone else with coffee in the front row, so you better be watching this stuff. Sadly, you're at probably the worst angle, but oh well, that's on you. You know, you could have sat anywhere. But all right, so let's see. What else do we want to do? So for the discovery service, we want the name. Seems like there might be another property I need in there, but I guess we'll figure that out as we go, right? Why not? Okay. It actually pulls out the port from the properties, so that's cool. So we'll see. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but if not, I'll consult notes. I mean, you can't remember everything, right? Okay, so now I want to enable Eureka Server, and let's run that and see what happens. I brought my spill-proof water thing because I get animated sometimes, and I've seen that happen. I haven't personally done that, but a former colleague of mine had a glass of water right by his Mac, and he's like me, he gets animated, so he moved around and he bumped it, and it fell right in his Mac, and it went, poof, and he immediately picked it up. I mean, reflexes were excellent. Immediately picked it up, dumped it, like water pouring out, and it kind of came back, and he's like, and then it went, poof, and that was the end of that Mac. So yeah, I learned from him. Oh yes, that was the other thing I forgot. I knew there was something. So we got our Spring config import, and we need to point this to our config server. That's kind of important. Tell it where to go to look, right? HTTP, and I've got this running, this one on localhost 8888. So now that should be a little happier. Now that it can find the config server, identify itself to the config server, and get properties from the config server, right? So let's go ahead and pull this up. The nice thing about the Eureka Discovery Service is that it actually also includes a panel, a dashboard. So I had that blown up a little bit there. So very quick tour, like 30 seconds. You have system status up here, which is useful information. You have general information about the service, the discovery service that you're running, and that's good, where it is and whatnot. But here is the key bit, right here in the middle, the key bits. And we have the discovery service replicas. As you see, I'm running one. Don't do that in production, folks. But for today, it'll be fine. You'll see some red stuff coming up there, some errors, warnings telling me I have timeouts not set, and I don't have any replicas and all this. It's all right. We can ignore those today, but please don't do that in production, okay? And here is the key bit of the key bits, which is the instances, or the display of the instances currently registered with Eureka. And this is where different instances of different microservices will show up. So if you have 3 or 30 or 300 of a particular service, it will show up here. So you can kind of get a very quick overview of what's running in your system. Right now we have nothing running in our system, so let's go and work on fixing that next. So the next thing I'm going to do is just start filling out our stable of microservices. And I'm going to start with an airport service. And what I want to do today is show a little bit of storage, but primarily reaching out to external APIs, working with different services within our distributed system. And we're going to start with an airport service because, again, I like planes. So we'll do that. I'm going to remove the dependency for Eureka server because what we actually want is a discovery client. Because, again, this isn't the server. We're just going to be dealing with the Eureka service. And then I'm going to also bring in a few dependencies like the reactive web dependency, actuator for production-ready information, Lombok because I'm a lazy developer. Lazy good, not lazy bad. I just want to be very clear about that. And then reactive Mongo because who loves their data anyway? I'm kidding. Mongo's excellent. And I'm going to use that just to store some things just locally for now. All right, so I think that should be good. Let's go ahead and generate that. There we go. And we'll open that up. All right. And come on, IntelliJ. I'm kind of, and it keeps recommending juice. I don't know, maybe it thinks I need more vitamin C. Anyway, all right, so we want to indicate once again what our application name is. In this case, this is our airport service. And then we also want to point to our config.import, which is config server, http://localhost 8888. And then let's go to our application. And let's start coding here. Now, I do want to indicate this is a discovery client, right? So we're going to be registering with our service registry. And then let's start with our domain. This is where I like to start, right? So I'm going to create an airport class because, airport service, right? And then we're going to just create a few fields here, a few member variables. So we want typing, we want the ICAO code, and this will be our ID. This is, of course, we're going to be storing this in Mongo, so this is a document. I'm going to be using Lombok because, again, I'm lazy. So I'm going to make this a data class and no args instructor at all args instructor. I want to ignore any properties that are fed to me by the external API that I don't need, because it feeds a lot of great information about airports here that I'm not going to be using today, so that's fine. I also want to define some things like the city of the airport, the state of the airport, and I'm using US Airport, sorry, but that's the API that I have. So, and I show you some of the airports around the names and details of the ones around where I live. So, city, state, name, and then we might have our latitude and longitude for our positional information. All right, and that should be that, right? Should be. All right, and then I'm going to define an interface for Spring Data, right? So an airport repository. So this is my repository interface. It lets me interact with Mongo. I'm going to extend the reactive CRUD repository interface defined in Spring Data. I'm going to store objects of type airport with IDs of type string. String, not sting. Great musician, but okay. Quiet crowd. You guys, you had coffee. You just don't like my jokes. Okay, that's fine. Nobody does, it's fine. All right. My wife tells me I'm unintentionally funny. I don't know what she means by that. Maybe somebody can help me figure that out. But anyway, so I'm defining an interface here. I'm extending a Spring Data interface. Spring Boot's autoconfig picks up and says, look, you have Mongo on your class path, you're extending a Spring Data interface, I'll bet you want to talk with a MongoDB database. We've defined this as our entity, if you will. We've defined our ID, so life's good. I'm going to go ahead now and create a service, and we're going to call this, cleverly enough, airport service, and this will be what we use to interact with our data store and our external API. I'm kind of munging things a little bit, but it's okay. It's a demo. And then I'm going to, let's see, so I will bring in the airport repository, and we'll call this repo. I'm going to make this non-null, and then have Lombok provide me with a required args constructor. Anything that I mark as non-null, it will inject for me, right? It'll create a constructor with that parameter. So let's see, what else? What do I need to do? Well, I want to be able to save things, right? That's usually a good thing. So public, and we will, well, actually, I want to retrieve things. We'll start with that. So I want to retrieve airports, a flux of airport. Is anybody here familiar with reactive programming, reactive streams? So in Reactor speak, a flux, I always kind of break this down, and it's an imprecise comparison, but when you return a value in imperative programming or standard Java, in blocking Java, if you will, when you come back from a method, you return an object of type T, or maybe an iterable of type T, so one or potentially many, right? 0 to n. And that's what a reactive streams publisher is. It's non-specific. It can be 0 to n. The Reactor team, Project Reactor team, decided that it kind of made sense to parallel what we are used to doing in a blocking world, right? So a mono means it returns 0 or 1 values, like that object of type T. You might get 1, you might not. But it's 1, that's it. That's your max. A flux returns a stream. Now, it may be like a small cluster of them, if you will, an iterable. It's an imprecise comparison, but bear with me. Or it may return this pulse that goes on forever, potentially, but it's a stream of 0 to n. So, and there are operations that apply equally well to both. There are operations that apply to one or the other, a mono or a flux. We're going to be returning, in this case, a flux of airports, and we'll just say get all airports, and we'll return repo.findAll. Super simple. Thank you, Spring Data. And then I'm going to return a mono of type airport, because there are times you'll want to retrieve one, if it's there, one airport. We'll say get airport by its ID, right? And of course, we'll supply the ID. Come on, there we go. Nope. Whew, typing has gone in the toilet already. Okay, repo.find by ID, and there we go. Now, again, I want to be able to reach out externally and grab something from our external API, airport information. So what I want to be able to do is use a private final web client. The Reactive Web Client is a preferred client from the Spring team. Kind of supersedes REST template. REST template is not retired, but it's not being actively developed. It's being maintained. Web Client actually lets you deal with reactive or blocking endpoints equally well. So I'm going to create a Reactive Web Client instance here, web client. .create. We'll point that to http://avwx.rest/API/station. And there we go. And then, of course, we need a token, or security token, to get there. So I'm going to just use @value. So I can access an environment variable here. And that's something that config server provides. It provides our token for us. So avwx.token. And then if something goes wrong, what I want to do is report that. So no valid token retrieved. And that will show up instead of the actual token. And then, of course, we have a private string token. And now we can get busy with creating that external facing method. So public, we're going to return, in this case, a mono of airport. Retrieve, I'm going to distinguish that. Retrieve airport. And, of course, string ID. Return, we'll use our web client. I'll add to the URI, in this case ID plus, and then I want to pass in our token, right? Plus token, and then we'll retrieve that value. We'll convert the body to a mono of type airport. And yeah, that's good. All right. So that's our service that allows us to interact with our data store, that allows us to interact with our external facing service. Now we need some way to get to that. So I'm going to create a REST controller, class airport controller, and we'll use a get mapping, right? And then we'll return landing on the keys. There we go. Flux of airport, and we'll just say airports return. And of course, we need something. So I'm going to inject our airport service here. And at Alargs constructor Lombok, so it does the same thing, it creates a constructor with a parameter for each of your member variables. In this case, there is only one, so that works. And we'll use this to do a service.getAllAirports. Here, let's do a get mapping, and we'll grab, let's see, so by ID, right? We'll want to grab an airport by its ID, public mono airport, airport by ID. And this is a path variable, so we'll use that to grab that. We'll return our service.getAirportById. And that looks pretty good. We may actually want something else, though. I find it's somewhat useful sometimes to generate a list of airports. Public flux airport. No, actually just a flux of string, right? Because we're just going to go list. So list of airports. And return service.get all airports dot, and we're going to map each of those. So airport dot get ICAO plus, and we'll do this airport dot get name. That's fine. Actually, what I like to do as well is I like to log somewhere. You don't have to log. I just find it's kind of nice to see what's going on. Log, and I like to do it in the controller, but again, do what makes you happy. Happy trees. Okay, so this looks like it should work. What the heck? Let's find out. I'm counting on you, and you, and you, and you, and you. No pressure. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go back to our discovery service. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. I'm going to manually refresh this. See, emergency. Maybe you're incorrectly claiming instances are up. It's okay. We've got this. So I'm going to go click on this. And actually, it's coming up at the actuator info endpoint, which I've defined nothing for. So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. Actually, I'm going to go and pull this up over here. So, whoops. Let's see. Good. I didn't mess up the display. All right. I'm going to use HTTP. Yes. And then we'll just do that. We see the full listing here, but actually I do want to just get the list, and you'll see why. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, because I forgot to do something here. I like formatting, right? So if I do this, so this. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to do this plus, quote back in. All right, so that should look a little nicer. We'll restart that. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up KSUS, which is Spirit of St. Louis Airport. Let's see if I outran it. I outran it. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, come on. Did I do something here? Oh, I need to put airport/ID. Yeah, because it's stomping on the other endpoints. Never mind. Non-specific mappings. My bad. Airport. Oh, it's just now shutting down. Okay, so we'll give it a second. There we go. Oh, come on. Oh, it restarted. Okay, yeah, this is fine. So I go back here, I'll refresh, because we probably have a different port, right? Because that's one of the nice things you can do is you're not tied to a specific port. So actually I'm going to go here, and we'll just pull up the list. Oh, thank you. Whew. Yeah, I was sitting here looking at it. This is why I count on the front row. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I mean, it had HTTP there, right? Computer's so literal. Okay, so if I remove this, we get the full listing. If I put this airport, and we'll do KSTL, that's the big one. By the way, these are the airports that I have listed are just airports within the St. Louis metropolitan area that have towers. So they're what they call B, C, and D category airports. So they're not huge, potentially. St. Louis International Airport, Lambert is, but the other ones, less so. Anyway. But they're still towered airports and controlled. So we've got that in there. We've got everything working. So now we've got our airport service. And I did skip over something, but I think out of time, I'm going to go ahead and charge for it, and we'll come back to that later should time permit. Next, we need our weather service. If you fly, weather is very important because even if you're instrument rated, which I am, you don't fly through thunderstorms. That's bad. That can be very hazardous to your health and lead to you having a very bad last day. So we don't do that. And even if you're at Heathrow, if you have lightning striking in the area, they don't take off and land. So, it's good to know the weather. So I don't need to store anything in Mongo, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to generate our project here. We'll save that down. We'll once again open that up. There we go. Weather, open. And there we go. Open up our application properties. There we go. Spring.application name. I always use the shortcuts that I can to get me there faster. And sometimes it even works. Weather, service, and again, our config import. Spring.config.import equals. See, didn't work that time, but you do what you can. http://localhost 8888. All right. Now let's go to our application. And once again, at enable discovery client, and then we're going to define our domain, right? So we want a METAR class. What is a METAR, you might ask? A meteorological aerodrome report. That's the current weather. Aviation is like IT. We love our acronyms, right? But a METAR is the current observation. They have TAFs, the terminal aerodrome forecast, which I won't be going into because that's a whole big mess that we don't need to mess with today. But it's there, and it is served up by the API. I'm going to create a time class because, again, we can always use more time, right? Right? Okay, well, that's... All right, so we have a raw representation of our METAR. That's just the text string because it's very expensive, like in terms of bandwidth, to shoot data back and forth between the ground and airplanes or between satellites and aircraft as well. So we have this raw kind of condensed representation. We also have time. So we have the time of the observation, the time that it's valid, right? And then we also have flight rules. So whether it's visual flight rules, whether you don't need to file an instrument flight plan, or if it's instrument flight rules. And then, of course, for time, we have a zoned date time. And I'm just using what I get from this external API. So it's a little ugly, but it works. So, and then we have a string representation of that time. Once again, I'm going to be using Lombok because I'm lazy, and noargs instructor at allargs instructor. And there we go. Same thing with the METARs. At data, at noargs instructor, at allargs instructor, at JSON ignore properties, and we want to ignore anything that we don't need. And then here we're going to create our REST controller, and this will be our weather controller. Okay, so once again we will use an app value to pull in our key so we can access our weather that we want to access. So avwx.token, and no valid token. Private string token. All right. And then, of course, we want our web client. And we're going to point that to .create https://avwx.rest/API/ and we'll stop there because we're going to be doing some interesting things here. So for the get mapping, I'm going to return a default METAR. So this will be a mono of METAR. Nope. There we go. METAR. Come on, IntelliJ. There we go. And let's say default METAR, and retrieve METAR for KSTL. And of course, that means that we need to define retrieve metar. So we'll do that. And I'm going to do a get mapping for that slash metar slash ID. And this is a path variable now, and this will be our ID. And now return, we're going to use our web client to get, we're going to point to the URI, we're going to, let's see, we need to add slash metar, plus ID plus question token equals plus token. We're going to retrieve that. We're going to convert the body to a mono because we're getting a weather observation, a single one, right, of type metar. And that, I'm going to log that, actually log. There we go. All right, so let's run that and see what we get. See if I missed anything here. Oh, yes. It's all right. It's just a method name. Although it's going to bother me. I mean, now that you pointed it out. I'll fix it later. Okay, so let's go see what we have here. All right, let's go back to Eureka. And we see we have a weather service. Let's go ahead and click there. We'll just leave it up here. That's fine. Once again, it's going to my empty endpoint. It's fine. So I go here to retrieve. Oh, that's unexpected, as they say. Let's see what I missed. Get metar KSTL token no valid token. Oh, well, this, oh. I'm sorry? There was a different token in previous service. No valid token retrieval or something like that. Let me double check that. So, okay, so let's do this. And let me close that. And let's bring up our, yeah, I probably did typo here. And let's do the same thing here. And let's close that window so we can see what we're doing. All right. Yeah, that's just the default value, though. I mean, it should be pulling that in. So let's find out. Let's see why it's not connecting. Weather service. It's going to config server. Okay. I'm sorry? Oh, no, because I've got the discovery client here, but it should be finding that just fine. I wonder, now I do have to wonder, though, because value. Nope, that is a correct annotation. Private string token, AVWX token, REST. Oh, wait a minute. AVWX.REST /API. I'm adding on metar. Everything looks good here. That's the thing that's throwing me. But it's just not pulling in the token. Did something crash maybe out here? That's probably the first thing I should check. No, it's there. We're running. See, this is the cool thing about you. Somebody mentioned something here. Where did you go? Anything new? Or same thing? Okay. Let me try turning it off and on again. Yeah, I'm looking for the typo and I'm just not seeing it. So let's go here. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. Let's refresh this. We've got our weather service. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. So I've got a default metar here. Retrieve metar KSTL. I'm passing that in. Yeah, let's try actually adding one in there here. So slash. Oh no. What's really weird about that is that it's just not populating that token. I mean, here's exactly what's happening, and it's saying, I mean, the formatting is fine. REST, avx.rest /API/metar, KSTL token, no valid token received.
I had a problem once where I had to put it in the Bootstrap properties. It's not that, is it?
You don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, that's an interesting twist on the latest updates to Spring Cloud config. Yeah, it's kind of.
So I had to go back to Bootstrap.
Yeah, this is.
Is it because your token on the left says token and the other on the right says token equals.
Well, look at that.
Equals.
That should, but the interesting thing is it worked for airport service and it shouldn't, because it should be token. All right, well, hey, I mean, literally, I've run this dozens of times and it's never done this to me. Why are you doing this to me? All right, let's find out. Because I'm game. I'm here for this. Oh yeah, this is the one downside of going through this when you're demoing, because you have to make sure you grab the right. Okay, so let's do the METAR/KSTL. And see, that's just not happy at all. Wow, this is going to be a short demo. I'm kidding. I have other code. I'll just pull up and run. But I am. Yeah, I mean, this is. What's weird is that this should actually be pulling this from the environment. And that should be just pretty much on autopilot. Private string token is literally the same exact code. Well, rather than get hung up on this all day, what I'm going to do is just terminate this, and I'm going to try something. I'm going to load one that I had done fairly recently, like earlier, because I wanted to make sure I could get to the API. I mean, public API should be public, right? But I'm pulling from an API somewhere in like Kansas City or something. So I wanted to make sure I could access it from here, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do this due to GDPR or something, or in reverse. So let me see if I can open something. No, because I mean, it doesn't even play in here. I mean, you literally have this. So let's run this. Let's see what we get. Is it what? Oh, yes, it is accessible. Yeah. So let's find out. This is really puzzling. Now I have a mystery. I love a good mystery. I don't typically get them, at least not too often, when you're live. But that's fine. I'm not bitter. And it works. Okay, so there is something in my code. There's a gremlin. So I will find it, I will tweet it, and I will say exactly what silly thing I've done. Okay, so here is, if we pull up the METAR, but I actually can do the default, and it should pull up the same thing. I can also go back here to METAR/KSUS for Spirit of St. Louis Airport. And this is what I was talking about. You have this kind of cryptic raw amount of information. So it's the 12th, it's 15:54 Zulu time, which back home it's 10:54 a.m. The winds are out of 200, which is southwest, 7 knots. Knots, nautical term, of course, yay. I told you it was a mix. 6 statute miles of visibility. It's hazy, but there are no clouds, so none under 12,000 feet. 31 degrees Celsius and 19 degrees dew point is the dew point, so on and so forth. So anyway, that works. Let's carry on. Now let's tie it all together, because this is really where I think the fun part comes in. Because we've got the applications that work, and they work okay. They deal with external APIs. They serve it up. But now I want to tie them all together. And this shows just a hint of the power of Spring Cloud. So conditions, service, and I'll just leave the same stuff. It's good. Gets us what we need. Save that down, go back here. Conditions, service, open. 3 minutes. We can do this. Open. If I hadn't lost like 5 minutes going, why is this broken? All right. Our application properties, once again, our Spring application name. In this case, it's conditions service, and config-import is config server. HTTPS. I have a funny feeling this is where I went awry. There's a typo or something that I just didn't spot, but such is life. Okay, so we'll go to our app. Now, I'm going to do something I'm just not very proud of here, folks, but time is short, so at least we're not being recorded, right? All right, well, sadly we are, but don't tell anyone. All right, so actually I'm gonna grab this, and I'm going to bring this over here, and that's my discovery service. Come on. We may not save much time. I'm going to just drop this out because I don't need all of this. I just need the ICAO code. I don't need this, don't need this. Yeah, we can ignore that. Okay, and now what I also want to do is pull in the information from our weather service. So I'm going to grab these, or grab our domain classes. It's fine. Shh, don't tell anybody. All right, condition service. And that's not terrible, right? And I don't even need that because, of course, we're not eliminating anything additionally. And I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly create a REST controller. This will be our conditions controller. And okay, the first thing I need to do, because I want to leverage both my airport service and my weather service, right? So I'm going to create a bean here, bean, and I'm going to create a web client.builder bean, because what I'm going to do is create two different reactive web clients. So builder return web client.builder. All right. And I want this to be load balanced so we can have client-side load balancing active. More on that later, if not, we'll talk again later. And then what I want to do in this case is have private final web client.builder, builder, and then I want to inject that. So at required args constructor. Yep. All right. Non-null. Lost my train there. Okay. And then I also want to have a couple of web clients, right? And this will be our airport client. And we'll just duplicate that. And this will be our weather client. I want to add this to my, come on. Actually, I don't want to do this. I want to just X this, and we'll create our constructor. Because then what I want to do is do the airport client equals web client dot, actually I want to use builder, right? And base URL, and we'll point this to http://airport service. Nice, right? Because we have our service registry, we can use the name that it identifies with to find an instance of that. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, WX client, same thing here for our weather service. And then, I need to .build because we need to actually build the web clients. So now we can do a get mapping and public string greeting, because I always like to send out a greeting just to make sure we're there. Return greetings, Devox. So good to be back. So good to be back. And then get mapping, and we'll have a /summary. And we'll do a, public flux of metars. We're going to return the metars. Come on, IntelliJ. Get metars. That's close enough. All right. Return, and we'll use our airport client to get all airports that we have. We'll retrieve those. We'll convert the body to a flux of type airport. We will flat map those airports. We'll take the airport, we'll do a client, a weather client.get. We'll add to the URI, right? And we will have our /metar/ and we'll use the ICAO code, the International Civil Aviation Organization code, and we'll supply that based on our get ICAO, right? And we'll retrieve that, and we'll convert that body to a mono, in this case, because there's one per each, right? So that's metar.class. Let's run that and see what we get. And yes, I know we're out of time, but we're almost there. We're almost there. We have to see the payoff. I didn't even get to the to a lot of the things that I wanted to show, but at least we'll cover the high points, hopefully. So did it go? Did it go? Come on. There we go. Oh. Unsupported or unrecognized SSL. Oh, did I? No, HTTP here. Oh, did I? Oh, dear. Well, I wonder if that's what no, it wouldn't have done that earlier. I'm still curious what I did, but we'll find out. Good catch, by the way. Look at that. Much happier. All right. So we'll go here. We'll go back to Eureka. We'll refresh. We see the condition service. We'll go here, and let's grab our summary, /summary, and the payoff. Look at that. Okay. So again, this gives a very quick hint sadly, way too quick a hint at all the things you can do with Spring Cloud. Azure Spring Cloud actually makes it easier because config server is built in, your service registry is built in. There are so many things that are built in that as a developer you can get to and tweak should you need to, but in many cases you don't have to. You point it, for instance, config server, you point it to that GitHub repository and you're off to the races. So let me go back and wrap up on the last slide. No, it started over. Good thing I only have a few slides. Okay, so if you want to find the code, it's out under my GitHub repo under Spring Cloud in the cloud. If you want to take the cloud challenge, visit the Microsoft booth, take the cloud challenge. You can actually do that online, so you don't have to visit the booth if you don't want to, just aka.ms/devox. You can ping me on email, but the best way to reach me is on Twitter, and by all means, please do reach out any way you want to, but that's the fastest. So with that, I will cut you loose. We will have fun the rest of the evening, and tomorrow, go Devox. Thanks for coming. And I will be tweeting shortly about what we might have missed there. Fun stuff, fun stuff. Thanks.